Let's talk about psychosis and neurosis.
My favourite subject. Yeah. As in a definition or as in...
Yeah, well, what's the difference? And I've heard you say that, you know, people that know the difference, people that have got neurosis might be well equipped at the moment. That made me laugh. I keep thinking about that when you said the other day. So
yeah, the difference between neurosis and psychosis in simple terms, in layman's terms, short, that neurotics are mad, but they know they're mad. Psychotics are mad, but they don't know they're mad. So that's probably, as a therapist, I'm about to be struck off for saying it. The idea is, if you walk into a house late at night and it's dark, I turn the lights on because I'm afraid the bogeyman might get me. Now, I know there's no such thing as the bogeyman, there's no such thing as monsters under the bed. I just feel safer with the lights on. It's madness, but I know I'm mad. I do it anyway. We're all good. That's neurotic behaviour. Psychotic behaviour is when you believe there really is a bogeyman who'll get you. And if you don't turn the lights on, he will get you. And you genuinely believe it. So that's psychosis. Now, neurosis, which is what the vast majority of people that I see suffer from. So, for example, people who are suffer with health anxiety or even just extreme anxiety about anything and everything. I've had quite a few. I do a lot of supervision, so a lot of the clients I talk about are actually clients of other therapists, my supervisees, but I'll pretend they're my clients for the purpose of telling stories. A lot of people have said they've had clients who very neurotic, very anxious, very, oh, it's the end of the world, on a normal day. Suddenly the pandemic comes, and actually these are the people who are coping really well because they know how to deal with anxiety. They've lived with it all their life. Now their worst nightmare has come true. It's like, actually, I've been waiting for this day all my life.
See, I told you it was going to happen.
Yes, I was born for such a time as this. It's that thing that they're handling it very, very well. But of course, part of it goes back to that thing, I think, about beliefs, what we were talking about before, and that shock factor of everything that we believed. If we believe life is going to be rosy, when it's not, we don't know how to handle that. If we believe life is awful and it's all going to end in misery, and then suddenly we get a pandemic, well, we were right, weren't we? And I think there's a comfort for people in knowing what's going on, understanding it. I think this is. I mean, we talked earlier, didn't we, about conspiracy theories? I know I'm going off on another tangent.
Oh yeah, conspiracy theories.
Yeah, but the point is,
is that neurotic behaviour or psychotic behaviour?
Well, don't get me started on. I think it depends, doesn't it? But it's that thing of people have a basic need to belong. They want to feel valued. The three basic needs of everyone is to feel safe, feel like they belong, and feel like they're valued. We need that as children to grow up healthily, and we need it as adults, although we look for it in different ways, but we need it. So it's a very strong driver to feel like we belong and that we're valued. Now, if there's some secret society that understands what's going on, and you're initiated into their secret knowledge, then there's a sense of belonging and a sense of, oh, I feel special, but it also brings an enormous comfort to know what's going on. Everybody wants to know, how long's the pandemic going to last? How bad is it going to be? When's it going to be over? What are we going to do? Now, the answer to all those questions is, I don't know. But why decide any politician who stands up and says, we haven't got a clue, we're just winging it? It's political suicide, isn't it? So we have to pretend that we know what's going on, and people find a comfort and a security in knowing what's going on, even though they've still got no control over it. So, and I think particularly in a postmodern world where, particularly in the younger generation, who speaks with any kind of authority, who do we trust, who do we believe, we're very skeptical of anyone and everyone, all that kind of stuff. So I think if you suddenly hit upon something that resonates with you, and you can belong to this club of people who also believe the same thing, then it brings with it a certain security and stability. And if you want to put that in a Christian context, I think if you go back 2,000 years to the Gnostics, who had secret knowledge, didn't they? This secret wisdom revealed by a demigod, that they knew things that mere mortals and normal Christians didn't know. But in our secret society, we know the answers. And if you're initiated into our secret society, you'll be one of us and you'll know the secrets. I think there's something very attractive about that. And I think there's a real pull to it and a real power in it as well. So I think that, we want to understand because it gives us a sense of safety and security and comfort. Even if we can't do anything about it, at least we understand it. We want to belong. We're always looking for, I think we're often looking for comfort, aren't we? We're looking for security.
Yeah, we are.
When there is no security and stability, we'll start clutching at straws, don't we?
Yeah, human beings are human beings. They haven't changed.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, so all these heresies that go around that. So Gnosticism, secret knowledge, to make, you know, that they're all ways of coping with life. Pelagianism's the one we talked about earlier. You know, actually, I'm supposed to trust Jesus, but really, I believe if I work hard enough, I deserve something. It just is human. That's the problem with heresies. They're misrepresentations of faith to pander to the bad ways we deal with God and with life.
But they're close enough to the truth, aren't they? It's like stereotypes. They're not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But there's enough truth in them that people think, oh yeah, that must be right. So you've kind of gone off and started off in a right direction, and then just veered off a little bit, haven't you? So I think, you know, with the conspiracy theories, if everyone said it was an alien invasion, you wouldn't get many people subscribing to that. But when you've got people saying, oh, it was an experiment in China, you know, they were, you know, messing out with bits and pieces, suddenly everyone's ears prick up a bit and they think, oh yeah, I can believe that. And suddenly you've got a conspiracy theory, haven't you?
And all these things come together, confirmation bias and all the other crazy things that go on in our brains. When you were talking about all that stuff there, it reminded me of, I heard about the other day about uncertainty, wondering whether this causes neuroses. And the experiment was, I think it was a bunch of behavioral psychologists who do weird things like electrocute people to see how they respond to stuff.
Yeah.
and they need therapy afterwards for it. Who wonders why? But they found that if people, the experiment was something along the lines of, if they knew they had something like a rock they had to turn over, and they knew that they were going to get an electric shock, and if they were told what level it would be, and then they had to measure how much pain they experienced, the people that turning over the rock who didn't know if they were going to get a shock and if they did, what level it would be, when some of them got a low level shock, they experienced more pain than the people who knew they were going to get a worse electric shock. In other words, they were saying uncertainty is just so difficult for us that in the face of it, we catastrophize, and that when something bad happens, we're experiencing it as worse than it really is.
Yeah.
Is that part of neurosis, or does it feed into, how does it feed into it all? Now I can talk to someone who knows what they're talking about.
Well, somebody pretends he knows what he's talking about. Yeah. Imposter syndrome. I can feel it creeping up on me. No, I think, yeah, I mean, it is neurotic behaviour again. Well, is it neurotic, or is it just, it's unconscious behaviour? We just respond that way, don't we? But I think it is that, it's that thing, whenever things like the experiments like this happen, I always think of a serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we talked earlier, didn't we, about acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a similar therapy built around, it's not built on that, but it's a similar sort of thing. That there are certain things that we can't change, so we need to work on how do I accept it. There are certain things I can change, so we need to work on where do I find the courage to change those things. And of course, the wisdom to know the difference. And it is that thing that there is a deep hunger, I think, in all of us to feel the security of knowing, we don't handle ambiguity very well. And again, coming back to churches, I've got a friend who talks about ministering the mystery of God, which I think is a brilliant expression. But he's quite happy to say, I don't know. He's quite happy, you know, if you're talking about God and why does this happen and how does that work and what is it about God? There is, I think, particularly in conservative evangelical circles, or certainly the ones I grew up in, there's a need to be able to answer every single question. Here's the chapter, here's the verse, that proves it, it's done, we've answered every single question. Whereas I think, my own opinion, a more mature faith involves being able to say, I really don't know. And it is that sense of mystery of God, but it doesn't sit right with people. We don't like not knowing, we don't like ambiguity. Again, coming back to, we like rules, we like the regulations, we like to know this is what we do, this is how we do it. You know, we feel safe in that. It brings safety. Let me tell you a story. I had a friend, she said that she was brought up for the first 2 or 3 years of her life. She was brought up, 18 months, 2 years, anyway, doesn't matter, in a flat, first floor of a house, and somebody else at the bottom floor. And so it was very restrictive, don't make too much noise, don't do this, don't do that. When she was 2 years old, her parents moved to a 3-bedroom house, big garden, everything. And for the first 6 weeks, she was unutterably miserable. Her mum told her, you just cried all the time. Actually, her mum had this brainwave, got her old crib out, set it up, put her in it. She was perfectly happy. Within that security of this is my world and I know how it works and I'm safe in it, it's all perfectly fine. Those walls away, those boundaries away, and suddenly you've got this big wide world with all this unknown and all these things that, might be good, they might be bad, they might be, who knows. And the thing about human beings is that we are wired for survival. We're not wired for happiness. We're wired for survival. Instinctively, we're geared towards survival. And of course, not knowing something can be very, very dangerous. And you see that kind of imagery throughout the Bible with, darkness symbolizing evil, because in a world where you didn't have electric light bulbs and street lamps and everything, if it was dark and there were enemies in the dark, whether they were an army or it was wolves or it was whatever, the darkness becomes a very, very scary place because we don't know. We don't know what's in there. We don't know what's going on. And so I think it's a fundamental sort of built into our genetic DNA kind of right at the very base level that not knowing something is potentially dangerous and threatening. And therefore we find it very difficult to sit with it and just accept it and embrace it and just accept it's ambiguous, nobody knows, and we just have to accept it. We just have to accept that we don't know.